place is equal. The choice of red was feminine, red for roses and the red hot flame of a woman's passion. The red table concept also conjured the feeling of sitting around the campfire at night, the magic of people captivating one another with story. The tradition is in our DNA, dating back to prehistoric times when our ancestors gathered around the fire to dance and sing with ritual and ceremony. The red table, representing fire, safety, and warmth, is also the color of the blood that represents life, connection, and transformation. Through communication,
Donna D, she
through
mentioned it.
confession,
I skipped
and
that
through
chapter.
expression, the red table is where we can purify our hearts and our souls.
I don't
It
know if she
clear up the
said simply what
confusing
it was,
dynamics
though.
within us and between other people.
Get the lights up. Get the
And
lights
so,
up.
conceived as a place for truth and unfiltered dialogue, the first ever Red Table Talk was birthed, a Mother's Day gift to women of all ages. Over the years, Gammy and I had never talked at length about her story before becoming my mother. Her own traumas of being a teenage mom, or the details of her addiction and recovery. I knew parts of it, of course, the parts I was there for, but she had never pieced everything together in so clear and honest a way as she did that day. Up until this conversation, Gammy would bristle if there was any reference to her as a recovering addict, rather than recognition of her. Later, when Ellen Rackerton told me I should be doing something with the red table, why don't women open up and share our experiences and wisdom with one another more often
So
and
this
in a
this
deep
chapter was
way
more about
about
red
taking
table time.
responsibility? With all the work I'd been doing on myself, that's what felt most important. I was not willing to allow someone else's narrative to put a shroud of shame on me. I felt that coming to the table to tell my story was imperative. Besides, I couldn't ask others to tell their truths at the red table and not do the same. This was not supposed to be psychodrama. My narrative would encapsulate 1. How the entanglement happened when Will and I were separated. 2. How it had been over for nearly 2 years. 3. How there were no secrets whatsoever between Will and me, so there was no cheating. When I told Will what I was planning to do, he, by his own choice, without any prompt or request from me, decided to join me at the table. Frankly, I was surprised, pleasantly so, considering we weren't together and given where we were sitting in our relationship at the time. That was unexpected. But he suggested that he did not want me to go to the table alone. That seemed to me to be a powerful offering, in line with our intention to be more of a united front. In our life partnership, spiritual partnership, we don't know what the hell this is yet partnership, we weren't quite fully united, but we were working on it. The not quite there yet part became glaringly apparent when we sat for that conversation and the camera started rolling. Beforehand, Ellen had done what she usually did, and that was to pre-interview guests. Will and I were in agreement that we would come to the table to talk about what our journey had been. We were going to honor our life partnership, yet speak openly and honestly about how that partnership had changed and how we were still figuring it out. We wanted to say that divorce wasn't an option and that family would remain our top priority. The timing for our shoot wasn't optimal. It was late. Will had just returned from a trip, and we were going to leave for a family event the next day. On top of that, our set had been taken down for the season, so we had to reset cameras and lighting, which took much longer than planned. Once the conversation finally started, now very late at night, we began with ease. But midway through the table talk, I could feel the conversation beginning to turn. Although at this point Will had been free as a bird for the last 4 years, living his life on his own terms, he seemed to convey that he had been done wrong. At my reference to having had an entanglement, He sternly reframed it with a laugh as a relationship. This came across as if this had all been a secret to him, when that wasn't true, and that he had somehow found out about my relationship as if I had not told him about it. Here's where I should have stopped the conversation, but instead, my habit of self-betrayal overwhelmed me, and I swallowed my own voice. After a few more failed attempts at regaining the narrative, I resigned and abandoned the purpose of why I had come to the table in the first place: to tell my truth and to show how we were in partnership in working through being separated but not divorced. Of course, I did what I was trying never to do again. That is, fall right into my martyrdom bag. It was clear that Will and I were no longer in alignment, that the train had gone off the track. Because I didn't want to oppose Will publicly, in my codependent way, I took the blame and played the pleasing and appeasing role I knew so well. This trauma reaction was an old friend I thought I'd kicked to the curb. But clearly, it could still be activated when I was in fear of being abandoned or not feeling protected. I wonder if Will was feeling the same way. It was hard to tell, with him sitting there with his tired, watery, weepy eyes. To be fair, Will's eyes water all the time, and it was very late. Child, unhealed trauma will do you dirty.
Not his eyes water all the time.
Despite how its remedies and responses wear the guise of being appropriate.
Welcome, Arlene. New subscriber is in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Guys, if you want to send a super chat in the chat, or if you want to send PayPal, Cash App, that's all that I have as far as, if you want to donate to the channel. But, of course, subscribing is also a big help as well. I appreciate it 100%.
Caring, loving, familiar, and safe. You would have thought after all the intense work I'd been doing on myself, through therapy and spiritual focus, that a car crash of this nature would be avoidable. But another aspect of my lack of self-worth revealed itself that day. No matter what, I was not going to throw anybody under the red table but myself, even if it meant wearing the scarlet letter. And then there was my street code that came into play. This was my mess, so it was my bid to serve. To do anything other than taking the blame felt equivalent to going to Miami, getting 10 keys of cocaine, and driving back across the Maryland state line, then getting caught, only to snitch on my homie in Miami to soften my consequences. That was not an option. So I decided to do my time. Will jokingly referred to himself as the man who stood by his woman on the steps of the courthouse after she was tarnished by her transgressions. I understood that the situation was humiliating for him, and that was never my intention. Will managed to...
Big Steph, I appreciate that, baby, so much. I appreciate it so much.
Inject humor into the conversation. Enough so that by the end, we could fist bump to our slogan of, we ride together, we die together. Bad marriage for life. It's said...
Okay, so that's crazy. Because on the Breakfast Club today, he mentioned that. He said at the Red Table Talk, they said we ride together, bad marriage for life. And Envy was like, they didn't say that. You heard her say it with her words, child boo.
So much when at the very end, Will got in a final stinger, laughing, but truly serious. He proclaimed that
thank you,
we
Big
were
Steph.
Okay, but with the caveat.
I love my crew. Speaking of my crew, guys, look, guys who are here, you guys support me heavy. But I'm telling you, the thing I need you guys to do is join the membership. All right? That's what I need. Now we're going to go to the next chapter. The chapter after this one is the slap.
I'm going to get you back first. Laughing but serious myself, I interrupted with a rebuttal of, "You going to get me back? I think you've gotten me back. We're good on that." In that moment, at least, my voice returned as I took a more honest stand on my own behalf, knowing all that had transpired between us. When the time came to post the conversation, I could have decided against it. Many implored me not to put it out. Miguel simply said, "You're giving the message that it's all you, and that's not true. You're going to take a big hit for this. It's my mess, so it's my hit to take." Ellen wasn't as adamant as Miguel, but she suggested that I sit on the video for a bit and maybe return to the table alone, as I'd originally intended. I honestly just wanted it over. If that meant taking the hit so we could move on, cool. So I told Ellen, no, I think we should put out what we have. Once everything settled, I had to sit with my feelings of genuine hurt and betrayal. Even if part of that betrayal was on me, it felt unfair. The loneliness that soon set in was excruciating. Would I have chosen otherwise if I had it all to do again? Yes and no. Yes, if I could have revisited it, I would not have gone to the table so ill prepared. But no, I learned everything I needed to know about myself and more from going to that table ill prepared. Being as hard headed as I can be, I know that without the experience, there were things I would not have seen about myself or others that the red table revealed. Besides, I met a fierce warrior within myself during this time. She had been in hiding, but now she was willing to go into the arena and battle shame. And for that, it was all worth it. A part of me was willing to be torched by public opinion as a path to discovering my authentic value and the embers of what remained. If I could survive telling the truth while also taking the brunt of a lie, I could finally let go of all the pictures that I thought defined my worth. I knew, as painful as the journey would be, this was my opportunity.
Okay,
Chapter
we're going
20.
to the other chapter.
Surrender. Why an index finger? The more I thought about my crazy dream, the more I was reminded of lessons I learned in my spiritual journey. I had forgotten that in many spiritual disciplines, the index finger represents the ego. In my quest to find full surrender and peace, the major obstacle was my ferocious ego, not anyone else's. Sure, I'd set aside the know-it-all of the pseudo-guru, but now I was convinced I was on my way to sainthood. At this time in my life, I'd stripped myself of every vice in my repertoire. I had no relationship to escape to, and I was practicing abstinence from alcohol and sex in a disciplined fashion unlike never before in my life. This left me staring at the werewolf of my ego and all its manipulations, cravings, and deceit. Yet I'd only scratched the surface of what I needed to become. Clearly, I was not qualified to take this. I think he is still in Europe. No, he's there, Jada. You should find him and go see him. Harry, are you positive that he's in Vietnam? I'm positive. Well, that changed everything. Thich Nhat Hanh in Vietnam? There was no question. I had to try to see him. I hated the call. Go for it. Taking a trip of this nature by myself was something I hadn't done in a great while. Being alone in a foreign place, detaching from old ideas of life, can be a gnarly experience, considering it would be just me and my ego. And yet I was excited. My plan was to visit 2 cities in central Vietnam and then head south because it was rainy season in the north. Chapter 21. The Holy Joke, the Holy Slap, and Holy Lessons.
Okay, this is it, y'all.
March 27th, 2022. The Dolby Theater, Hollywood, California. I'm sitting frozen in the front row, just to the left of center stage, during the live broadcast of the 94th Academy Awards. I am confused, and what can only be described as one of the more surreal events of my life. I'm trying to stay composed while trying to grasp what just happened and urge my brain to catch up. As I watch Will march down the steps from the Dolby Theater stage to return to his seat next to mine, the air in the room feels completely still and is hauntingly quiet. Everyone in the house appears equally confused about what just happened. I'm still not quite sure if what I witnessed on stage between Will and Chris Rock was a skit or real. When Will drops into his seat,
I don't understand that. I do not understand how you're going to sit here and say, like the crowd, like everybody else, I'm just saying, this is my opinion, how you were confused and did not know if it was a skit or if it was real life. In a situation like that, like I get you guys are separated and all kind of stuff, but come on.
and we catch eyes is when I first suspect that what just transpired was not a bit. I quickly grab Will's hand to reassure him, I'm here. And then I look deeper into his eyes, hoping to gauge where he is. He's sitting in his seat, but it feels to me that he's in another place and time. My mind is trying its best to mentally rewind the tape and review the past few moments. From where I was sitting, the whole confrontation looked fake. My angle prevented me from seeing.
Hold on, let me see at the end. Let me make sure at the very end of the last one, she doesn't talk about this. Let me go back. Ouch. Let me go back. Let me just make sure.
Chapter 20. Surrender.
Hold on.
Many friends to celebrate Jaden's birthday. One morning, an expensive piece of jewelry. I was the jewel. This journey, all that struggle, I had turned 50, and I had finally found my way home.
Okay, I was just making sure. Okay, let me get back to the
Chapter 21. Events of my life. I'm trying to stay composed between Will and Chris Rock. Was a skit or moments? From where I was sitting, the whole confrontation looked fake. My angle prevented me from seeing that Will's swing actually made contact. That was confirmed to me only later. Hold on, I'll get to that. Until then, my mind didn't register it, for several reasons. Will had been going back and forth from his seat to backstage all night. So that's why my first thought was, is this a skit he and Chris planned earlier when they ran into each other backstage? Did he just not tell me? Plus, when Will swung, open palmed, it looked like Chris pulled a stunt move and ducked the shot. And when Chris was still standing afterward, I believed my observation to be true. Aha, this is a skit. I'd witnessed professional fighters laid down by the force of Will's hands in the boxing ring more than once. This had to be staged. Otherwise, how could Chris be on his feet like nothing happened? It's not until Will yells from his seat, back up at Chris, to keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth, and then repeats it, that I perceive the gravity of the situation and that, no, it had not been a skit. Even so, I am unclear on the reason why Will is so upset. We had been living separate lives and were there as family, not as husband and wife. But when I hear Will yell wife and the chaos of the moment, and internal shift of, oh shit, I am his wife, happens instantly. This is when 16-year-old Jada appeared. I'm back in a club back in Baltimore. A fight has broken out, and shit could start popping. I'm aware that I'm at the Oscars in a beautiful but very heavy forest green dress with a high neck, a zipper bodice, and a train 1,000 miles long, and I've had to stay seated all evening. But no matter how much growth I've recently experienced, my old mechanisms are driving, and my mind is racing with, oh shit, if I have to fight or run, I'm done. I can't even get up. But no matter what, Will and I are in this together. And you know, the craziest thing about that whole evening was there was a point when I wasn't even planning to come with Will at all. There's a lot of backstory with that. Over our many years together, Will and I had worked side by side in our philanthropy, in business, and on many creative projects. When we decided that our marriage was going to move into more of a life partnership, with family and holidays always a constant, Will and I saw no reason to part ways in our creative and business collaborations. We were ardent fans and believers in each other's talents, very yin and yang when we came together in that way, and it worked. The same differences that made us collide were the same differences that created exceptional magic. It was in this context, not long after Sundance in early 2018, when I'd been part of the film festival's U.S. dramatic competition jury, that I made a passionate recommendation to Will, who was set to star in King Richard as Richard Williams, father of Venus and Serena. No director had been found. I had a great feeling about Reynaldo Marcus Green, whose film Monsters and Men I had seen screened at Sundance. Octavia Spencer, also on the panel, and I had both fought tooth and nail to make sure this powerful, haunting film received its due and that Reynaldo left Sundance with an award in hand. So much so that we created a special dramatic category, Outstanding First Feature Award. That's how impressed we were by his work and how determined we were that this talented Black director be recognized for it. In a conversation about the ongoing search for a director for King Richard, I told Will, you should meet Ray. He is an extremely talented director, and I believe he could have an eye for this. Will took my advice and watched Ray's movie. To my delight, Will believed, as I did, that Ray would be perfect for King Richard. Will then asked if I would come on board with him as an executive producer. He also wanted my help making sure that the production authentically reflected the voices of the powerful Black females in the cast, specifically the mother of Venus and Serena, Oracene Price, whom I loved and whose elegant strength, I believe, needed to be a potent part of the story. The offer for me to come on board was gracious on Will's part, and I accepted. The day I saw Anjanou Ellis read the part of Oracene in our living room, she embodied the role so naturally, so powerfully, I knew that this character was in the best possible hands. Anjanou, who had an outstanding body of work, was bad to the bone with every nuance.
Ingenue is
I was
bad,
damn near
baby.
jealous of her natural presence and the exceptional quality of her talent. Unfortunately, before production began, Will and I had a falling out, a symptom of our trying to navigate our separate lives and different needs. I thought it would be best to be taken off the movie. Will pushed back, saying that he wanted me to be part of a film he believed held important themes we both cared about. Black female representation in a sport that denied so many women of color, the importance of family, the challenges of parenting, and the universal power of perseverance. But I don't want my name on something that I didn't participate in fully. You found Ray. You helped me with the script. And I know this movie is going to be special. I want you to be a part of the history this movie is going to make. I left it alone, and life went on. As awards season approached, I was happy to see the many nominations the film had received, and of course, was proud of and excited for Will when it became clear he was the favorite in the Best Actor category at the Oscars. Getting the film nominated was the big prize. But if he won, after two previous nominations, Ali in '02 and Pursuit of Happiness in '07, that would be icing on the cake. This coincided with a shift I was seeing in Will. He had just finished filming Emancipation, which was very challenging for him psychologically. Playing that character rattled him in a way that led him to a therapeutic setting, allowing him to begin to unpack all that embodying the role of Whip Peter had brought up for him. In the process, Will suggested the possibility of us taking steps to go back into therapy with new counselors. I resisted at first, but that changed when I met Don Rosenthal and Ishmael Lounsbury. These two men and their approach would be life-changing. When Will asked me to accompany him to the various award shows in early 2022, culminating with the Oscars in March, I was pleasantly surprised. For every special moment in our lives together, we had been there for each other. I welcomed the gift of this opportunity and the continuation of our bond in that way. After all, we were now at 6 years of not living together as a married couple, but still legally married. However, our movement back into therapy and his invitation for me to be at his side for award season told me that we weren't ready to give everything up just yet. We still had an inexplicable connection, an attachment that didn't want to let go, that couldn't let go. My answer was, of course. So there we were, sitting at the Oscars, living out Will's belief that King Richard, with 6 nominations, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Will, was going to make history. And, as the world is our witness, we did make history, only not quite how we thought. This is only part of the backstory. There is more. There is much more. I had my own premonition right before the incident on the Oscar stage. It flashed through my mind.
Now hold
as
on.
Chris Rock's face.
Hold on.
Okay.
Mind you, I did not interrupt that. That little spark that you heard, that wasn't me. Let me rewind it. I want you guys. I don't want you to think I did that.
And Best Actor for Will.
Hold on.
And for me to be at his side, March. I was pleasantly surprised. For every special moment in our lives together, we had been there for each other. I welcomed the gift of this opportunity and the continuation of our bond in that way. After all, we were now at 6 years of not living together as a married couple, but still legally married. However, our movement back into therapy and his invitation for me to be at his side for award season told me that we weren't ready to give everything up just yet. We still had an inexplicable connection, an attachment that didn't want to let go, that couldn't let go. My answer was, of course. So there we were, sitting at the Oscars, living out Will's belief that King Richard, with 6 nominations, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Will, was going to make history. And, as the world is our witness, we did make history, only not quite how we thought. This is only part of the backstory. There is more. There is much more.
I'm not even touching it.
I had my own premonition right before the incident on the Oscar stage. It flashed through my mind as Chris Rock's face came across the screen as one of the presenters that night. In fact, my stomach clenched. He had been known to take swipes at me, and from the Oscar stage, no less. That had been in 2016, 6 years earlier, during what became known as hashtag Oscars So White. That was the year when the Academy Awards nominations came out, and almost all the talent was white. When I spoke out about the lack of nominations for industry members of color, the online chatter declared that I had an axe to grind because Will was not nominated for Concussion, which couldn't have been further from the truth. What I didn't take into consideration was that Will and everyone with Concussion had been campaigning for nominations, so I could see how my outspokenness could have been misconstrued. But there was no axe, because I knew that he would have another shot at a nomination. My concern was, what about the actors of color who might never have another opportunity? What I also didn't take into consideration was how Chris, as a black male host that year, would be affected or the pressure he would be under. Nor did I imagine that he would take offense to a question I posed in a video I made, as whether we should continue to support the Oscars that weren't consistently celebrating talent of color. Let me add here that, contrary to Chris's claim in 2023 that I called him and asked him not to host the awards, that didn't happen. Ever. In fact, in the video I made about hashtag Oscars So White, I tried to acknowledge Chris's tough predicament by saying, and I quote, "Hey Chris, I will not be at the Academy Awards, and I won't be watching, but I can't think of a better man to do the job at hand this year than you, my friend. Good luck." Maybe he took the sentiment as a backhanded vote of support, but that surely was not my intention. The reason I mentioned Chris was my way of saying, you are actually the best person to host the Oscars in a moment when what's needed is some witty social political commentary. That could make for some powerful learning moments for everyone. Maybe I mistakenly assumed that a hard-hitting comic like Chris Rock wouldn't take offense to such a comment. By this era, Chris and I had developed a friendly rapport. I had been given the chance to see another side to him from when we worked together on the animated feature Madagascar, and were out promoting it. I found him to be quirky, with an unexpected sweetness, and very intelligent, with a biting wit that's impressive if you're on the right side of it. At one point, during rumors that Will and I had divorced, Chris even called to ask me out on a date. Once he found out I wasn't divorced, we laughed, and he apologized profusely, and life went on. So, I never thought he'd see my comment as taking a swipe at him. In hindsight, maybe I should have called Chris personally, checked on him, and wished him luck in a situation that was clearly difficult. That was the lesson learned after others mentioned that I was a target of Chris's opening monologue for the 2016 Oscars. Why me, when there were so many others who had been even more vocal? The subtext that night was, why refuse to attend the Oscars when I wasn't invited anyway? In the aftermath of those swipes, Chris reached out via text with a heartfelt apology. I reached out to my team, including Will, who were all pretty upset with the comments he made about me, to let everyone know that I would be responding and burying the hatchet. I then sent my apology to Chris in return. From there, I believed us to be cool, and 6 years went by without any contact, until once again, we were at the Oscars, the first show in person after the pandemic. And when he came out on the stage, I immediately felt a train wreck coming. Trying to be optimistic, I told myself, a lot of time has passed. It's the Academy Awards. There are no new misunderstandings, and I'm sure he'll play nice. But another thought was, he's not going to be able to help himself. The plot twist here that many people don't know is there had been decades of disrespect between Will and Chris, starting in the late 1980s, before either of them even knew I existed. Like many old beefs, it began with a big old misunderstanding that I don't have enough therapists or lawyers to begin to explain. And it just kept festering. As a result, over the years, like a lot of celebrities who are seen as fair game by comedians, Will and I both were dragged across many stages by Chris's jokes. To an extent, you have to know that it comes with the territory. That being said, lines do get crossed. What you do is learn to laugh on cue and pretend it doesn't bother you, even when it does. Laughing in response to scathing delivery, even when it's mean, becomes a coping mechanism. The rolling of my eyes. Might I explain? When Chris came out to present an award, made some jokes, got lots of laughs, and like comics do, decided to milk his time on stage, he saw me and my bald head and ad-libbed. Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane too. Can't wait to see it. Just like I thought, he wasn't able to help himself. And I rolled my eyes. It was not because of the jab about my alopecia, but honestly about the people I had met whose condition was far worse than mine. That was indeed a very light joke, as many expressed, but it was not about me. I was frustrated that the majority of folks can't seem to understand how devastating alopecia can be. My heart broke for the many who live in shame, the children who've committed suicide after being teased and taunted by their classmates. And now the Oscars, in all its political correctness, was telling the world it was okay to make jokes at the expense of a woman suffering from alopecia. It was disheartening. And I didn't take personal offense. I took offense because the condition of alopecia was being mocked. I was going to be fine. This was just another day in the salt mines of the world we inhabited. My eye roll was me reacting authentically and simply being human. I didn't feel like faking it anymore. Besides, really, Chris? We gotta go through this again? Did it later shock me that a multitude of opinion mongers would point to my eye rolling as proof that it was my fault? You know she gave Will the side eye and made him go up on that stage to slap Chris. No, I was not shocked. Some of it did surprise me, like the insinuation that I could have stopped Will in his tracks as soon as he got up from his seat. Or I could have told him to sit down and relax and leave Chris alone. The vitriol in the coming days did come faster and more furiously than I'd. Well, this is the thing that Jada doesn't understand. I've had this discussion with my mother, who my dad was a very spirited man. Like, something going on, like, look, don't get him. He's a Louisiana Cajun man. If something got to pop off, it is what it is. But my mother, you know, was in that role as a woman, as I've seen many women. No, I'm not saying you can jump up, be crazy, or stop him. But if you thought he was about to get up, you could have maybe placed your hand on his hand or on his leg to kind of bring him back, like, baby, something. I know it was a fancy award ceremony, but you're worried. I mean, to me, I might be wrong. You were about the initial being embarrassed because you may have done something besides sit there because you're dressed too heavy for you to move. But then no, we got famous for a slap. I'm just saying, make it make sense. Predicted. Blaming the woman is nothing new, and I was clear on that. It was easy. For me, I'm not blaming the woman. Will did what he did. I say that women want to be included in everything. Well, if your man is doing something out of pocket, unfortunately, yes, you are going to be tied in with that, mama. You are his woman. Now, mind you, prior to this, no, we didn't know your ins and outs, whether you was his wife
or not, separated, or even if you were divorced. This man has known you for over 20 years and y'all have children together. Nobody but you could be the one to say, hey, chill. Don't get up. Don't do that. And you made a decision to sit there and be in shock or whatever it was, clutching your pearls and things of the things. Like, come on. It's not. That's the same thing that we fall on. It's okay to say it sometimes when they blame the woman for everything. There are some times that this is a fact. A lot of times it is. But when you are married and you guys are in this union, you take on everything. Damn it.
It has been the story of how the perfect Hollywood megastar had fallen to his demise because of his imperfect wife. The patriarchy depends on pinning the downfall of humanity on poor Eve. The Adam-Eve dynamic wasn't necessarily on display at the Academy Awards, but let's look at the context. Women are increasingly being marginalized in one way or another. What's sad is how many women have become the gatekeepers of this marginalization within the patriarchal construct and are fierce participants in the shaming and blaming of women. I have to point out, when a man, any man, commits a displeasing act, how bizarre it is that a woman can be fully to blame. How is it that a woman can be so irrelevant and culpable at the same time? It's absolutely mind-boggling and quite a fascinating riddle. When it came to Oscars 2022, I had to think about the narrative out there of me as the adulterous wife who had now driven her husband to madness with the command of one look. I had to take responsibility for my part in aiding that false narrative's existence. I also had to chuckle at the idea that the world would think I wielded that amount of control over Will Smith. If I had that amount of control over Will, child, my life would have been entirely different these damn near 3 decades. Real talk. Where the night's confusion intensified was when Will returned to his seat and Chris remained on stage as the clips of the nominated documentaries were being shown on the screen. Everyone in the room seemed frozen from shock. As the clips played, Chris, who was now at the edge of the stage, saw me in the front row next to Will and said, "Jada, I honestly meant no harm." Will barked back at Chris once again, conveying his frustration with Chris talking to me. Rattled myself, I couldn't absorb Chris's apology and threw my hand up in the air saying, "I can't right now, Chris. All this is about some old shit." Then the action resumed on stage, and Chris went back to announce the winner, Questlove, for Summer of Soul. After his acceptance, a commercial break was taken. Denzel Washington and Bradley Cooper were both nearby and went to Will and huddled up, trying to ground him. For the next couple of minutes, I continued to sit there by myself, trying to find my own steady ground, and was grateful for the men gathering around Will, because I was at a loss. Let the men handle this. I remained still and present, ready when I was needed. At the next commercial break, Will's publicist, Meredith, and my publicist, Karen, came to our seats to figure out what to do next. Meredith had just been backstage and informed us that Chris had left the building and was not going to press charges. Press charges for what? I asked. Meredith confirmed what I had missed, that Will had in fact made contact with Chris, who had not, as I'd thought, ducked. I looked at Will in shock. "You actually hit Chris?" Will nodded and said, "Yes," a bit surprised that I had missed the moment of contact. I took a moment to collect my bearings. In the fog of it all, though we could have left, we didn't know whether we were coming or going. Given our history of coping with disruption of this magnitude, we did what we knew to do, which was to move through and try to get back to normal as fast as possible. From my point of view, that's how we all responded to the events of that night in that room. It was a collective response. Let's get back to normal. Nobody came and said, leave, or, oh my God, what have you done? The fog from the slap disoriented everyone. At every commercial break, different groups of people came over to check in. One of the first people to say something to me was Lupita Nyong'o, who was sitting right behind me. She leaned in to ask, "Are you all right, Jada? I'm so sorry." Reeling and numb all at once, I tried my best to assure her that I was okay. And then Nicole Kidman and her husband, Keith Urban, who are always so sweet and generous in these settings, hurried over too. I reassured and thanked them for their warm concern. During another break, when I was sitting there by myself, I looked up and saw the one and only Ramsey Naito rushing to my side. She knelt beside me and said, "Jada, I'm here. Are you okay?" Once I saw Ramsey, my facade cracked enough for me to let her know I had no clue if I was or wasn't. Then Tiffany Haddish came over, and Queen Latifah made her way to us as well. This made me feel tethered, at least enough to shake off a bit of my disbelief. Ramsey later told me that she had never seen me so alone and isolated, except for 10 years earlier at my 40th birthday. The difference was that this time I could stabilize myself in the storm and find the inner fortitude to keep my head up. My concern was Will. I can't tell his story of why he did what he did, but I can tell you it had everything to do with Will's own personal battles, which unfolded on a world stage. And what I knew, for the first time in 6 years since our breakup, was that I would stand with him in this storm as his wife, no matter what. I had not felt that way in a long time. I would not abandon him, nor would I fight his
No problem, Big Steph. Somebody probably will after this, but I just wanted to hear the book because I've been hearing about it so much.
fight for him, like I had tried to do so many times in the past. This fight was his. There were other emotional subplots that collided for me at the 94th Oscars that I couldn't untangle in the moment. What happened on that stage was a deeply difficult, complicated, painful moment, and my heart broke for every single person affected, including the viewers. No question. It was agonizing and shocking to watch a hero have a human moment as his trauma splattered all over that room for the world to see. It crushed the romantic idea that if we achieve enough, we're exempt from our shadow. And then seeing conflict of that nature displayed between two black men on a white stage was disturbing, as was watching a black man insult a black woman on a white stage. Once again. What's more, women of color are damn near never defended. For that reason, even amid the chorus of voices ready to blame Jada for the slap, I recognized that there were women from every walk of life who were secretly screaming, "Fucking right, 'bout time." A slight whisper of that sentiment spoke to me too. It made me feel, thank you, Will.
Now, I will say this, okay? When Chris said what he said, one of the things I said when I watched it, I was like, why did he? Because y'all know I don't have any hair. And I don't talk about why, but I have, I probably have that. So it's better for me to keep my hair completely short. So I'll have to admit, you don't want to hear those types of jokes. I mean, no one ever come my face and tell me no shit like that. But I'm saying those types of jokes about not having any hair or whatever. You have to be really comfortable in your skin to be able to walk around with no hair, which I am. And I just, the joke was in poor taste. I'm not gonna sit here and defend and say his joke was okay just because you got slapped across the face.
For defending me. But I also knew he was defending more than me, and much that had nothing to do with me. There was a lot of blaming, and Will for sure got his share for stealing the magic of a night that should have been remembered for great wins for filmmakers and actors and other truly talented artists being given their due. I did take comfort in the fact that there was no blood on the stage, and there were no guns drawn, and these two privileged men would walk away intact with no police interference. This is not at all to minimize the humiliation of the clash that evening. But since I know that fame and stages don't keep you safe, it brought me ease that these two were able to walk away, not unbruised, but safe and alive. Will, it seems, was suffering from the trap of his own handmade gilded cage. Turns out he is human, as we all are, including Chris. And here's what 10 years in the valley of the shadow had taught me. Everyone's hurting. As the old saying goes, hurt people hurt people. Often, when we are finding our way, we end up bumping into each other's hurts on the path. Welcome to the human experience. What I was learning was not to take any of it personally. Toward the end of the live broadcast of the Oscars show, I had a revelation that it wasn't my place to try to steer any ship. My job was to be in loving presence for myself and Will. There was no fixing or avoiding the storm that was to come. The way out was the way through, and this night was the opening of a new door into yet another unknown. One of the holy lessons of this night was how to practice loving unconditionally. All that thorny history of our complicated life together became a non-issue. Will was going to need my support. I knew that people who once proclaimed love for Will would turn their back. I knew how that felt, and I knew he didn't. My heart broke for him, but I couldn't prepare him for the onslaught. The only thing I could guarantee was that I wasn't going to leave his side. We came together, so we were leaving together. We were in this together, period. Ride or die, Bonnie and Clyde.
Hey, Miss
Call
Baked
on all the romanticized versions of all the outlaw shit you can think of. This is where my mind was sitting. Through all the bullshit between Will and me, when it's all said and done, this is what I do. I'm a ride or die. This night proved for me that conflict can indeed amplify love and compassion. Loving someone in ideal circumstances is easy. But what do you do, say, if someone decides to make a comedy special full of lies and unwarranted insults?
Now I don't know if she's trying to say the comedy special that he made after the fact. I don't know.
You love them as God does. And you say to yourself, when people hurt, that it could be they believe they will feel better if they lash out. Can I honestly say I've never been there? The answer is no. And that's where compassion and well-wishing come in. As difficult and challenging as the events connected to Oscars 2022 were for everyone involved, I call it the holy slap and the holy joke because of all the holy lessons there to be learned for all of us. In the media frenzy that followed, I realized I was not any different from every hater and critic when it came to Will Smith. I had been willing to accept and embrace only that which I considered pleasing behavior from Will. I did not know how to love him in his shadow states. The holy slap helped me learn how to walk hand in hand with Will, with all the bats and gremlins. Part of him, that had been banished deep into the darkest exiled lands, and to be a torch of love for him until he could find his own. Shadow walking with a loved one takes a lot of practice, but it is the birthplace of unconditional love. The holy joke was my own shadow walk. Chris had hurt my feelings in the past, and it was like poking an old hurt when it came back around. And although I wanted to hold on to my resentments, I'd learned that would hurt me more than him. I'd seen another side of Chris beyond his hurtful jokes, and I could not unring that bell. He deserves my concern and my consideration, despite how he may decide to drag me on stages. That's his issue, not mine. From spirit to spirit, he is my brother. And if it weren't for his holy joke, I would not have been able to embrace this teaching so deeply. The Holy Slap taught me the importance of learning to love Will in his shadow, how to continue to love myself through so much misunderstanding and vitriol, and how to love you, dearest listener, no matter what your thoughts may be concerning me, Will, our family, our marriage, or the Holy Slap. You have a right to think it all, and I will love you anyway, because you are lovable and worthy too, by the decree of the divine. Blessed be, so it is, thy will be done.
Okay, hold on.
Chapter 22.
This is the last one. I don't know.
Putting the crown on the queen of my heart,
Let me see.
other close members of my tribe. A little over 11 years had passed from that very first night in Ojai and the medicine woman's driveway, with me bearing little more. Okay, I'm not going to get into the whole medicine thing, anything. I just wanted to play, and I've been online for over 2 hours, not realizing it. As a blogger, y'all know I love giving my subscribers, my Commission Reviews crew content, whether y'all are my enemy or not, and listening to Bush as much as y'all do. So much has been heard about this book. I wanted to hear it, and I said instead of me playing it by myself, I'll play with all you guys. So it would go back and play it. I think I covered almost everything about the relationship, about the slap, about even the Tupac situation and some of her early life. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. My Cash App is Kamisha Reviews. If you want to send a donation, PayPal, Super Chat, or just subscribe. And make sure you guys please join the membership and check out my other channels. I'm trying to get my grilling channel to 500. Okay, so go over there and subscribe with Grilling with Boss Lady C. I don't have anything else. I don't think I'll be live or anything else at all. Just stay tuned for content. As always, I love you down, guys. It is Kamisha Reviews, the queen of reality TV.